want to start kind of in the beginning of the middle. Like, share the path that led you to Philippe Chow.
It was about 2008, financial crisis. I was working in finance, selling mortgages. It was time for a career change. The economy wasn't doing well. Um, I decided to, take a waitering job there. I was on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. Didn't really know much about the brand other than, it was a popular restaurant. Um, Started waiting tables there, and they had a Hamptons location. Went out to the Hamptons quickly that summer, and then they were in the process of expanding to new locations, and a manager position became available within a year of myself working there, and that's how it all started.
I think it's so easy. So, like, we could just leave it there, right? But it's so easy to glaze over the fact that that had to be a really difficult period in your life, right? It's to transition from one industry to another, from one career path to another. Prior to the financial crisis, I'm sure if someone said, "Hey, I bet you'll be waiting tables in 2 years," you would have said that's highly unlikely. Um, Talk to me
Yeah, I mean,
about that.
you graduate college. A lot of people are, waiters, servers, whatever positions in a restaurant through their college years, which, that was the case for me. But once you graduate college, you think that those days are behind you. You never look at it as a career. So when I had to, go from having my first job out of college to going back to the hospitality business, it was a little eye-opening. But, you do what you have to do.
Did it change the way you saw your life and your future?
Uh, I think over time, yes, but initially I didn't realize it was a career change. I just thought it was, going back to what I did before I graduated college. So through the years, even up until the pandemic, I wasn't sure if that's what I was going to stay doing. But I stuck with it and saw it through.
And so, at what point did that change for you? At what point did you say, "Oh, there could be a viable career here"?
I would say up when the pandemic happened, um, there was things going on in the hospitality industry. Obviously, a lot of places were closed. Um, I saw an opportunity at that point. Life had kind of slowed down. There was a little bit of a reset, and I was like, well, if you're going to do it, this is the time to do it. So that's kind of when I decided to open Say Less.
Talk to me about the path that led there, though. So, at some point, you become the concierge to the stars, right? You're engaging with celebrities. Um, how did those relationships build over time?
It was just through years of work. I worked 6 days a week for about 10 years. Obviously did my work in the restaurant, but after work, before work, a lot of meetings, a lot of, dinners, get-togethers, events, a lot of networking. I think my experience working in the corporate world helped me with that, in terms of, meeting people, taking their contact information, following up, sending happy birthdays, little things like that, just to, engage with people. And I think social media, obviously, from the evolution of Facebook to Instagram, LinkedIn, all of that kind of evolved through the times and, through my career.
And how did you do it intentionally? How did you intentionally build network? And was it just something that you've always done, or were you doing it with intention at the time?
It it wasn't with intention at the time, but it's something that I've always done. I've always been a connector, bringing people together from all different walks of life. People that might not really cross the paths. One way or another. I introduce them, or I do a lot of traveling in terms of career wise and personal. So when you meet people somewhere and they have a skill set or they have a career that you don't really know a lot about, you kind of try to learn about it and understand how that could apply to what you're doing in your life.
Is it formulaic for you? Is it in my own life? I'm always trying to be of use. That is what I have found is that a superpower is figuring out how you can be useful to everyone in your orbit. Was that your strategy as well?
No, not at all. I'm just being organic. Never forcing it. If the relationship evolved, it would evolve. If it was meant to be, it would happen that way. Uh, but no, it definitely wasn't something that was planned out, or it was not a process. It was just through the years it kind of evolved.
And then did the pop-ups give you when you eventually ended up at Julan, did the pop-ups help give you the tools that you needed to build out Say Less?
Not really. I think the pop ups was something that showed me that I could go and do this anywhere. It's not really about the place, but it's more about the network. So it just opened my eyes on, I could be in a different market and people will come as long as, you execute and you bring a great product. So that kind of just, opened up, the reality that, I could do this. I could step outside my comfort zone and, build something bigger.
And the pop-ups were within larger events, right? So to provide some context.
Correct. Yeah. So tentpole events, where a lot of my clients would be in a market at a given time, outside of obviously New York City. So NBA All-Star Weekend is probably the main one that I would focus on, because that brings music artists and athletes, primarily basketball players, to a market. So I've gone to All-Star in Toronto or um, Salt Lake City, Chicago, Indianapolis. So different markets that have nothing to do with what I do in New York. Doing a pop up in those markets at that time proved to be very effective.
And then when you say clients, what services were you providing at that time?
It was just, a full hospitality experience. So it would evolve a lot of times from meeting them in New York. If it could be at the venue or it could be at, a nightclub, after work. And then, building those relationships, going on the road, doing a lot of sporting events, a lot of concerts, meeting, friends, families, agents of those people that I was interacting with. Um, and, just keep building it up.
You could have done anything with that network. Why open a restaurant?
The restaurant I'd like to say is my office. Yeah, you take that network and you go somewhere outside of your comfort zone, then it doesn't keep feeding you. So having that to constantly, you know, evolve and build, a restaurant's like a well-oiled machine. Once you get it going and you figure out systems and you put them in place and you have a great team, it's something that you just have to keep, keep keep pushing along. It's not something that you have to, micromanage.
It's interesting that you say that because I would argue that the experience for most independent owners and operators is that it's very hands on. It is something that they have to micromanage. So, how is your approach different?
I guess micromanage is all relative. You definitely have to be hands on. So I'm still at the restaurant often. When I'm not there, I'm on my phone. Conducting business. So when I say micromanage, if you put the right people in place, to succeed, and you create systems that are foolproof, and it makes their jobs easier, then you don't have to be there. Looking at the specific categories if you have the right people in place.
Were there systems you borrowed from prior employers? Were there things that you saw, behavior that you modeled, infrastructure that you experienced that you installed in Say Less?
I think naturally you learn something from every experience in life. It could be from the hospitality business, it could be from your corporate job, it could be from an internship, it could be from a life experience. But you just try to take deficiencies in the process and improve them. And that could be with anything. It could be with your ordering, it could be with your payroll, it could be with the menu, and take whatever there's a deficiency in or something that is not strong and just improve it.
Talk to me about expectation versus reality. So you run other people's businesses. Like running a restaurant is entirely different from owning a restaurant. It is one of those things where, at least in my experience and in so many people I've spoken with, the expectation versus the reality is just incredibly different. Is that what it was like for you? And if so, how did you adjust?
A lot of the heavy lifting, very hands on, and a lot of them were very hands off. In some situations, they had built something that was there, and I was kind of, that was the early part of my career. I was implementing the systems they had in place. And then as I, grew in my career, I ended up building systems and building restaurants for the people I worked for. Um, so I think when I branched out and did it on my own. And when I say on my own, I have some, tremendous partners that, we're a team and we all execute, to our strengths. I think it made it a lot easier than maybe most people would experience. I stuck to what I knew. I stuck to the cuisine that I knew. I had a very large following of clients that, have supported me over the years. And I think obviously coming out of the pandemic, being towards the tail end of that, there was definitely a desire for something new in the market. And I think all those factors together, really, really propelled us.
I'm sure for every setback in your life, you spent a lot of time wondering how, why, critically analyzing it, I feel like we're less likely to do it with the successes in our lives. But if we could dig into like how successful it is, the hospitality landscape is littered with failed restaurateur celebrity partnerships, right? It just having big people involved does not ultimately determine that this business will be successful. Um, and so that being the case, what did you do to ensure that it wouldn't be a flash in the pan and something that was so hot that it would ultimately burn out?
I think success is relative. People sometimes worry about the wrong things. At the end of the day, the balance sheet is what's the most important thing. You have to have good food. You have to, have great service. The restaurant needs to be clean. But I think sometimes people worry about, and when I say the wrong things, the image, the perception, their ego, when they're trying to build something, and they get away from the principles of the business. So I think that's really what's helped me, you know, I guess, open a successful venue is just understanding, you know, the inventory, the payroll, the costs and numbers that go behind the business. And I think some of that, is attributed to my previous experiences working in finance, being a finance and marketing major, and some of my life experiences just applying it to the restaurant business.
You're in a hard market. It's expensive to do business. And how do you make it pencil out during a time when labor's at an all-time high, cogs are at an all-time high, people are dining out less?
I think just, be consistent. Do what you do well, do it often. And wherever you see something that needs improvement, focus on that. Listen to your employees, listen to your clients, and, take criticism. If someone tells you that they don't like something or they had a bad experience with something, don't be offended, but take that as, a way of improving something that's wrong in your business model.
I would assume so Say Less has such a star-studded reputation that you end up with a lot of people there that aren't celebrities that want that celebrity experience. They want to feel that way. Um, how do you have you set up the hospitality model in a way that makes a couple visiting from Omaha, Nebraska feel like they're celebrities?
Yeah, I think it's correct what you're saying that, everyone wants to be that celebrity or, have that experience or feel like a celebrity. But we really do try to treat everyone the same. If it's a celebrity or if it's, a couple celebrating their birthday, someone that's doing a group party, a bridal shower, a wedding rehearsal dinner, whatever the event or occasion is, it could just be a night out with friends. We try to be consistent in what we do. Obviously it starts with the food, having your staff understanding the business model and what you're trying to achieve and, really executing that. I think every situation is not the same, and you kind of have to adapt to the situation at hand and make sure that you're representing your business the best way you can.
How often are you in the restaurant?
About probably 5 days a week at this point. It was 6 days a week for a long time, but I do have a new family, so try to have that work-life balance.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about work-life balance. It's hard, in especially with a new family, it gets harder because you realize how precious the time you have with your family is. And it moves so quickly. Like you think the restaurant business moves fast, and then you have a kid, and you turn around and they're walking and they're talking, and it's the craziest thing in the world. But it certainly does a lot to realign priorities. So, how has that impacted the way you see the business and how you engage with it?
Yeah, so I think the timing of it was incredible for me. Worked 10 years to obviously open up Say Less and bring it to life. My first child was born right before opening it, and then a year later, my second child was born. So the restaurant was sandwiched by the birth of two of my children. Um, but I think it really put everything into perspective for me. What matters, you know. I guess purpose is the best word I could use. Like you grow up, you work, you go to college, you graduate, you earn money, but you're doing it for yourself. And then once you have to do it for someone else and, someone's depending on you, it just gives you a different kind of purpose and a different kind of focus.
You mentioned that you view the restaurant as your office, right? This is a place you do business at. There is a marketer that is one of my mentors, and one of the things he said people use media the wrong way. Everybody's trying to make money off YouTube, right? Or on YouTube, when the goal is to make money off YouTube. And what he means is it's not about making money off the ads for the thing. It's about using the thing that you made to generate more business and more awareness. And it seems like you've adopted a similar ideology around the restaurant, that the restaurant helps you do business. It is your business, but it also helps you to do business. Is that an
Yeah, I think
appropriate framing?
the restaurant is obviously the focus, and that's the
Sure.
mothership, per se. But you get a lot of access and deal flow. Um, I think over the years, what I've learned is learn to say no and don't entertain every opportunity or every person, and be more selective. So I think as you mature and you get older, through trial and error and some failures and letdowns, you realize every opportunity is not a good opportunity.
And so, how do you vet those? How do you vet what is an opportunity and what is a distraction? What is the lens?
So I think, contrary to early in my career, make yourself not as accessible as you used to be. And the people that need to find you or be put in touch with you, um, get to you as long as, they know the right people in your circle. And when I say circle, that could be someone that you interact with once a year, but you just, it's a like-minded individual that, you have no problem reaching out to you.
Has mentorship played a role in your career?
Yeah, I would say that there's, several people that, I would consider as mentors.
What'd you learn?
Ask questions, learn from your mistakes, and go after your goals.
If you were to dig deep into those things, how would you? Because I mean, that great advice could have been on a fortune cookie, but how do you apply those lessons to your life in a way that is resonant? How do you remind yourself of those things?
I think just work hard every day. That's really the principle of it all. Um, and then as you evolve in your personal life and in your career, you just learn to make better decisions, and focus. In terms of not, you don't have to do things instantly, and a lot of people want instant gratification. Put the work in, put the time in, learn, and then create a plan. I wasn't always like that. As things evolved, I've learned to just kind of sit back, let things evolve, and learn from every experience.
Oh my God. I mean, probably one of the greatest lessons of my own life as well is I have a bias towards action. I'm sure you do too. But one of the greatest lessons that I've learned consistently through my career is pause. When something happens, instead of immediately reacting, just pause, wait for the dust to settle, see what happens, and then you're able to make a clearer decision. Patience has played a role in your career as well. Um, by nature, entrepreneurs are very, very impatient people, but you seem to be linear in thought and tactical and focused and patient. How has that paid dividends over the years?
It took a while. I put the time in. I think that's the best way I could explain it. Is slow and steady wins the race. And then obviously there will be opportunities in life that come about that kind of speed up that life cycle. They could speed up and then slow down again. My first job out of college, 22 years old, selling mortgages. I thought life was gonna be pretty easy, and then that got taken away from me pretty quickly. I had to do some soul searching. Ended up back in the restaurant business. Had to start all over again. But I think all those experiences together is really what groomed the person I am and the businessman I am.
How do you think about growth? So you look at, say, less incredibly successful brand. How do you consider growth? Are you looking to grow the brand? If so, in what capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I think any business growth comes down to the numbers. So you want to be moving in the upward direction. But I always say more doesn't always mean better. If you have one project that really feeds you, that could be better than having five projects that four of them are losing, and the one now is depleted because you are not focusing on that one. So I think that's something that I've definitely learned through my experiences working with some of my previous employers, that over expansion and stretching yourself too thin doesn't always mean that the end result is better.
Well, I think that, growth in a very traditional sense in our industry is number of locations. but you can also grow within your own business. You can grow number of services. You can maximize capacity on peak, off peak. I'm sure you've also been exposed to so many other brands. Um, when you think about growth personally, where do you want to be in 3 years, in 5 years?
I think naturally, having more than one location. Um, but I think being in a place where I have the financial freedom and the time freedom in order of working on projects outside of the restaurant. Um, and when I say projects, that could be a hospitality concept, but it could be something that has nothing to do with hospitality, but it involves the people in my network. So I think just the evolution in 3 years is to have that growth, personally, financially, family, and then having the freedom. So I think growth and freedom, I guess, kind of line up with each other.
Marketing for most restaurant owners and operators sits on the back burner. It's something that eventually they'll get to when they have time. And then you look at Say Less and you see this amazing marketing apparatus that you've built, that you helm. How do you think about marketing as it relates to the restaurant?
I think the simple thing I always try to relate to is that give people what they want. Some people get too cute and too fancy trying to create something that is not organic and real. Um, Figure out what people want. Why do people come to your venue? And then just kind of repeat it and make it better. But we have a tremendous team, as I mentioned, and we have certain people that focus on marketing, certain people that focus on events, customer service, and collectively we all bring something to the table, and it's worked from day one, and we continue to fine tune it. We learn from our mistakes. We observe the market. We travel. We try new things, and we see what works for us.
It will, and also the pop ups, the Say Less pop ups, I would assume have been an amazing way to build brand equity, build awareness, and try new markets. Yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes we do pop-ups in markets that are not organic to what we do, but it's more about the brand building and building something bigger. So even we could do a pop-up in a market that has nothing to do with New York, but the people that are in that market at the time, it really broadens our reach. And when they do come to New York, they want to check out Say Less and see what it's all about because they had such a great time at the pop-up.
Is it also about trying out new markets to see where there's product market fit?
I would say no. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of where our product and our concept will work. Um, it doesn't work in every market, and then I think you have to understand that you can't just duplicate what you have in Manhattan in many markets around the world or around the country. But there are certain markets that are kind of obvious, that that you could duplicate it. It might not be the same. Every market is different. You could have two restaurants in the same market, and neither of them is going to be the same as the other one. But I think you have to be consistent in what you do, and you have to adapt to the market as well.
As it relates to growth, are you looking for specific KPIs? Are you looking for, I want to be in this business 1 day a week, I want it cash flowing X amount of money, and once we hit that point, I'll consider expanding?
I think if you look at things that way, you set up false hope and false expectations. You have to approach your business day by day. Obviously, the key word is growth, but growth doesn't always have to be financial. Um, you can meet new partners, you can meet new opportunities, you can meet new landlords. So the growth that you experience just has to be in a forward direction and something that's positive to your business and to your life.
There's been this post pandemic boom and now this post pandemic bust, especially in like your tier of dining, which was at one point my tier of dining. And New York is hard. New York is really, really hard right now. We've seen a bunch of great, successful concepts that could not make the finances work. When you look at growing, do you look at growing in New York or do you look at outside markets? Just knowing
I
how
think,
difficult it is in major markets today.
yeah. So I think you explore all opportunities. You definitely don't want to cannibalize your own business by, opening another concept that competes with yourself. But I think there's opportunities to open up new concepts that are complementary to what you're currently doing, and feed off the same network that you have. But I think ultimately you want to expand out of your market that you're in and identify what those 2 or 3 markets might be that you want to, tap into. Um, and obviously doing a pop up in that market before you go there makes sense. A pop up is all relative. It could be for a week, it could be for a month, it could be for 6 months. But I think we understand, and there's markets where we do pop ups that we know that we would never open a restaurant there, but there could be an event or there could be a client of ours that's doing something there that it makes sense to collaborate with them.
And then last question as it relates to growth. Um, when you look at your team, and you said this before, for a single unit operation plus the pop-ups, you're big. A lot of single unit operators don't have a director of marketing and somebody that handles events and somebody that does this and somebody that does that. Did you start out that big or did you grow into the leadership team you have?
For Say Less, we started out that big. We assembled, I guess, the all-star team of people that we knew we needed to, succeed, and everyone, executed at a high level and continues to execute at a high level. We don't over communicate, we don't over, criticize. We do what we're good at, and if there's something that needs to be addressed, we hop on a call, we have a meeting, and we work through it.
I think in the early days, people would look at that and they would say, well, how could he afford all that? But I would assume that your response to that would be great people pay for themselves.
Yeah, you know, uh, people have to carry their own weight in any business. But I think through the years, you identify people and strengths, and you bring them together.
How do you track that? Again, people need to carry their own weight. And I think the tragedy of our industry is it's very difficult to reward effort because the margins are so slim, right? So it's not about how hard you work, it's about what you're able to produce with the effort
Yeah.
that you put in. And so,
Well, I think
how do you keep people accountable to, if nothing else, their salaries, right?
Well, I think, the beauty of our business is, and I know every market is different, but, a lot of the employees are tipped employees. And those are the forward facing employees that really interact with your clients. So, they kind of dictate their own pay by giving great customer service, understanding the menu, understanding the mission of the restaurant. Um, so, just really hiring the right people, as obviously you have your management team, but the people that deal with your clients, having the right people in place, and they understand that, the better the restaurant does, the higher the sales, the more bottles of water, the more dessert you sell, adding a round of shots to, a celebration. Those are things that benefit everyone, and it affects the bottom line of the restaurant as well as the bottom line of the tips of the employees that work there.
Looking at the opening of Say Less, let's take the first 6 weeks, 8 weeks. If you were to open another one tomorrow, what would you do the same and what would you do differently?
That's a difficult question because I think there was a lot of factors that made the opening of Say Less unique, primarily the pandemic.
Sure.
And obviously that was in New York. So opening a restaurant in New York or opening a restaurant out in another market, I think the approach would be, a little different in every situation. But at the end of the day, understanding who your customers are, understanding what you're trying to do, finding the right venue, being in a great location. I think all of those factors are things that need to be considered when you're looking to open up a venue. And you're not gonna be right on all of them. You might miss on something that might be perceived as a strength of the business opportunity could turn out to be a weakness. But you have to adjust and you have to, improve and improvise.
What should we steal from you? What are the tactics, the tools, the strategies that you've employed in your own business that we could adopt to better our own businesses?
Like I said before, work hard, time management, believe in yourself, don't be afraid to fail, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and constantly learn from your employees, learn from your customers, listen to people, ask questions, and put your ego on the side.
Last question I have for you is say your last name for me.
Well, we don't have enough time for that. No, it's Mirjahangiry.
Mirjahangiry.
Got it.
All right. I got it. I won't fuck that up. I promise.
Appreciate it, Josh.
Dara, it was great. Hang on.